Born Before 64 is a TV show that asks the vital question, what will we do for the rest of our lives? Kathryn Raaker hosts a show for baby boomers and above, inviting real people to tell real stories about overcoming issues, about facing with courage and triumph the significant obstacles many of us face every day. So let's join Kathryn Raaker for Born Before 64.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Born Before 64, and let's just talk. Our guest is our expert on terror, our expert on financial, and our expert on lots of things, right?
Yes.
It's Dan Perkins, and welcome back to our show. It's been a
Kathryn.
while, right?
Yes.
And what's up lately? I mean, you're a political commentator, you're a guru, a financial guru.
Right. My website is called Guru.
Dan Perkins Guru. And we're doing a lot of things with your websites, and you've got new books coming out.
Yes.
But I think the thing that's the most exciting thing about what you write are your commentaries.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm extremely fortunate that I now write for 5 fairly well-known sites. I write for the Daily Caller. I write for thehill.com, Daily Surge. I write for Reagan Baby and Clash Daily. And some people say I'm a very prolific writer, but I think there's just a lot to write about.
I think there's a lot to write about, and I think that this is probably one of the most exciting, scary times that I can ever remember in our lifetime. Because am I older than you? I turned 72. How old are you?
71 last month.
Well, then I'm a year older than you, basically. You're the same age as my husband, right? So, growing up after the war, I mean, really, I was born in 44, you were born in 45, correct?
Yes, ma'am. August.
We didn't have a lot of the things that kids do today.
Right.
And so, they can't remember. We have to actually give them the history about what happened, really what happened. Because in the schools today, they're not getting.
They don't teach history.
They don't teach
history.
history.
They don't teach American history the way we were taught American history.
We were taught American history. And they have no idea, geography-wise,
Right.
on what's happening. Or they have no concept of what's happening globally, except what they see on television and what they hear.
Right.
So tell me what you think is going to happen. I have to say this.
Well,
if the Democrats get in.
Oh, if the Democrats get in. Well, let's be more singular than plural.
Okay.
Let's say if the Democrat gets in.
If the Democrat gets
Right.
in.
And I'm not sure that based on her political philosophy and the way she's talking about things, she's truly a Democrat. She calls herself a progressive.
Well, which is mostly a socialist, actually.
Yes, she is.
Communist,
She is,
whatever you
yes.
want to call it.
I write a lot and I talk a lot on my radio shows about what is the most important issue in the election. And as much as Mr. Trump wants to talk about controlling the border and he wants to talk about the economy and jobs and trade, and all those things are extremely important, the future of America is at stake because the next president could potentially, if he or she fills out an 8-year term, could be replacing 4 Supreme Court justices.
And that's the most important thing of this election.
Yes, ma'am. And it doesn't get a lot of play, but these are life appointments. And as a result of being life appointments, some of these judges could be on the court for 35 or 40 years.
Let me ask you a question. Could that change?
Well, I've been doing a couple of shows and talked about what could happen if Mrs. Clinton were to be elected president. There's a little known provision that's not taught in the schools of the Constitution called Article 5.
Okay.
The Constitution of the United States can be amended in 2 ways. Constitutional amendment has to be passed by 2/3 of the majority of the Congress, signed by the President, and ratified by 2/3 of the majority of the states. That's what is the been the common and the only way we have modified the Constitution, creating amendments. However, the Constitution specifies under Article 5 that the states can call a constitutional convention.
I know that.
Most people in this country have no idea what about an Article 5 convention. So what an Article 5 convention allows the state legislature is to call a convention, and at that convention they're empowered under Article 5 that they can replace the government, including the court and including the president.
That's a great idea, I think. I
Well,
think that's a great idea. I think they think about it. I mean, seriously, there are states that are talking, if she gets in, that they're going to secede from the union, and they're not joking.
Well, I understand that. I think that's probably a lot of rhetoric.
I don't know.
But I think that we could have a situation if Mrs. Clinton is elected, that there could be a movement, and we don't need many more states to call a constitutional convention.
Well, there was 33 the last time I
We
heard.
need 36. So
They
we
need 6
three.
at 3.
Three.
Wow. We could do it.
36, and that would be virtually create a new American revolution, because everybody would be subject to the recall of this convention. And I think that if this happens, we could have, for example, term limits on justices of the Supreme Court, a one term, probably 6 years for president, probably 4 terms for congressmen, 2 terms for senators. That's it, you're done. And I think that may very well be the way we save this country, because I look at what she says she wants to do.
What are the scariest things that she said she wants to do, in your opinion?
The thing that most people in the Bernie campaign, and she picked up on, most misrepresented is free college.
And who's going to pay for that?
Well, Mrs. Clinton, when she
The
introduced...
Clinton Foundation money might be, huh?
Well,
Well, you never know.
when Bernie proposed this, and then she got on the bandwagon, she estimated that it would cost about $450 billion over 10 years to pay for free tuition.
For how many
Free
kids?
college.
For how many kids?
She didn't say. There's no details, just that she somehow mysteriously pulled this $450 billion number over 10 years, which is $45 billion a year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can go on and you can go to that wonderful search engine called Google, and you can ask the question, what is the average of all tuition, room, and board paid by college students in the United States a year? It's $4 trillion.
So she's way, way off.
So $45 billion would only cover months of what it costs. So it's going to be would have to be a huge, huge budget in order to provide college. Now they're talking, well, maybe they're only going to make it up to people who make $125,000. Average household income in the United States, $57,000.
That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of people getting free college.
Right. And that's where I think she's really delusional in a lot of ways, because her math just isn't there.
Right. Part of the progressive agenda, I've said, and I give Rush Limbaugh credit for this, but I've used it many, many times. What the American people don't understand about the Democratic Party and liberals, they want to be judged on their intentions, not their results.
Oh, yeah, that's the truth.
And so it's a great idea to provide free college for everybody. How are we going to pay for it? We'll figure that out later. I think that one of the most interesting things that's developing right now is that we could have the shortest duration in history in a government welfare program in the history of our country.
Are you talking about Obamacare?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll tell you what, it's going down the tubes, isn't it?
Yes. I saw in Ohio here this morning in the Columbus Dispatch that the premium's going up 12.5% this year, And for many people, the out-of-pocket expense is going to over $4,000.
Nobody can afford it.
We've got only 2 or 3 exchanges left that want to do business. And where are they going to get the insurance?
I don't know. And on that note, we're going to be right back on Born Before 64 and Let's Just Talk with Dan Perkins and Kathryn Raaker. We'll be right back. We're back on Born Before 64 and Let's Just Talk with Dan Perkins, guru,
Yes.
political commentator,
Yes, ma'am.
author,
Yes.
good husband, grandfather,
I try
and
to be.
an author of children's books
Yes.
now.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
I am
very
too.
much.
I am too. But you're also a painter, a creator. You've done so many different things. But
Can't find a full-time job.
yeah, right. And you're also a registered financial advisor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, ma'am. 43 years.
43 years. Now, we were talking about the progressive movement, and we
Yes.
were talking about Hillary Clinton. We were talking about free college. What else does she want to give away free? And you know what? I've got to say one thing, Dan.
Okay.
And that is, if she wants to bring all those illegal aliens in, I want them to live in her front yard.
They've got a wall up there that they won't allow anybody through that front yard in Chappaqua.
Right.
My son, who was down in Florida with us, said, "Do you have any idea the size of the fence they put around Chappaqua?" I said,
No, but she can have them right at the White House. They could be right there on the lawn.
"Yeah,
Tents.
yes,
Right?
No,
No, I know. I never would happen like that. But
No.
I think the point is that she's so ridiculous about the number. She has no idea what she's opening the doors to. And do you really think the rest of the country is going to go along with that?
You know, that's a great question. I've asked this question many, many times. If the majority of people in America, when asked to describe Hillary Clinton in a single word, they use the word liar.
That's true.
How do people walk into the voting booth in November and pull the lever for President of the United States, who the majority of the people walking into the voting booth believe she's a liar?
I think there's going to be a lot of people that say they're going to vote for her, and they go into the booth and they go, really, should I vote for a liar? And they pull the other one.
Right.
That's what I think is going to happen.
There people are talking about that this election is about who has the least negatives. And I wrote a commentary for Clash Daily where I said, there are negatives and there are negatives. I said the negatives that Mr. Trump has are basically personality. They don't like his bravado, they don't like his language, they don't like his style. But the negatives of Hillary are not personality, they are character traits.
Which is a lot different than personality.
And much more difficult to change. Look at the difficulty she cannot get away from the emails. More and more keeps coming out.
And scarier things keep coming out.
And she's clearly a pathological liar. She can't remember what she said before, and so she lies to cover up a lie, to cover up another lie. Most recently, she had the situation with Colin Powell, where now there are people who are wondering if she's perjured herself in front of Congress because she sat in front of the Benghazi hearings and said that Colin Powell advised her to get a private server. And Colin Powell, and she's been saying it and saying it and saying it, and finally last weekend Colin Powell said, no, that's not true. I told her that I use a commercial server for my personal email and I use a government server. I used a government server for all of my government transactions. So, you know, she says that Comey says that she told the truth, yet Comey says she was reckless with this national security documents. She lied about the number of servers. Another one, that just kind of went by the press. She told us she had a server in Chappaqua. Now Comey is telling us she had multiple servers.
Really?
Yes, multiple servers and multiple phones. But he said it and it just died. Nobody picked up on it. Nobody said a word about it.
Well, the AP has picked up on the foundation.
Yes.
Big time.
Yes, they have. But again, I say to you, the media is The Washington Post, USA Today, and I think the Chicago Tribune and maybe the LA Times yesterday came out and said that they should close the Clinton Foundation now.
Well, that's what Donald Trump said.
And Clinton is saying, well, they'll close down the foundation if she's elected in the terms of not taking gifts from anybody outside the United States.
No.
And what I'm saying is, wait a minute. What Bill Clinton basically just told the world, if you want to give us money, now's the time to do it.
Right.
Because we can't take it after if she wins in November.
And here's the other thing. Did you know, and we've talked about this, that the Haitians are still out by the Clinton Foundation, and they are actually so upset still. They're wanting to know where the money is,
Right.
that everybody contributed it to them, and they never got it.
Right. Well, see, that's the other part. You know, I'm about to write a commentary piece on. They're talking about they should be closing the Clinton Foundation. Again.
Is there just one?
Well, I was just going to say which one.
Right.
Are we going to close only the one in New York, the U.S., or are we going to close the one in Hong Kong, the one in Kenya, the one in Sweden, and the one in the U.K.? We're going to close those two? Because none of those Clinton foundations outside of the United States report anything into the United States.
No, isn't that strange?
So we have no idea to what extent money has been collected. I mean, there's a wonderful, two things came out in the last week. One was this reporter who dug into the contributions for pay for play in the State Department. And then the AP came out with the diary and all the meetings that she had and everything. The amount of money that was given to the Clinton Foundation for arms deals approved by the Secretary of State, $158 million was given by the United Kingdom to help win political favors. Australia gave $138 million in support of to get her support of the TPP. I mean, the numbers are just astronomical.
And what's really weird about it is they're not blessed by the charitable foundation.
Charity Watch.
Charity-wise, because only 10% or 5% goes to actual charity. The rest of the money they're playing with for all the people that work for them. That's what I heard today.
Well, I know I did a piece on the Clinton Foundation, and I went back to the Charity Watch is one of those independent organizations that rates how foundations perform. What percentage of their money do they go to overhead and what percentage goes to the programs? It's Charity Watch that basically ultimately got the Wounded Warrior Project in trouble because almost 50% of the money given on Wounded Warrior was going to the overhead, only 50 cents.
That was one of the Wounded Warrior Foundations, right?
The Wounded Warrior Project, the most highest profile organization.
Was the one that...
Right.
Right.
But Charity Watch said, I think it was 15 years ago, refused to continue to evaluate the Clinton Foundation because they could not follow
The trail.
the accounting method, and they couldn't follow a rational distribution method. So they took it off the list. They were asked to review it again in 2015, and they said, we still can't figure out what they're doing. Now, they said, we don't know if that's good or bad. We just can't figure it out. We can't come up with... In 15 years, they couldn't come up with a ration. They couldn't come up with a model. Charity Watch could not come up with a model to evaluate the Clinton Foundation after 15 years.
That's scary.
Yeah. And so I just look at it and say, going back to the original question that we were talking about just before we went on break, one of the things that scares me about what Clinton wants to do is to eliminate borders.
I know.
She wants to have free...
Open borders.
Open borders. Anybody can walk in at any time. There's no need for immigration or naturalization or border control. Just open it up. Let tens of thousands or millions walk into the country. We can't afford...
But other countries don't do that. Why should we? We're paying for all the crap that she's doing.
Right.
Why should we keep? And then that's the other thing I want to talk about after the break,
Okay.
is why she should give up a lot of her money and not take all those salaries. Why should we pay her all the salaries that we're paying her if she becomes president?
Well, one question we can talk about after the break is, will Bill and Hillary be willing to give up control of their own personal money in a blind trust if she becomes president?
Right, and let's talk about that. Would you give your websites out, please?
My book website is danperkins.guru, and the books are available at amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com. You can order them through your local bookstore. That series called The Brotherhood of the Red Nile. And then our foundation website is songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us.
We'll be right back on Born Before 64, and let's just talk after these messages. We're back on Born Before 64 and Let's Just Talk. And guess what? Let's Just Talk is becoming a TV show too. So, but today we're kind of doing kind of a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you've been on my radio show now for almost 3 years.
Pretty close.
Right, and you've been
This
doing
month.
great. And you know, when I first met you, I don't think you were doing all this radio, were you?
Wasn't doing any radio.
You weren't doing any radio? Weird,
I was just writing books.
You were just writing books. Are you happy about, how do you like your life today? It's really radically changed, I think, since I met you.
Between the radio and the television and the 40 to 60 interviews a month and writing the books and working with the veterans, it is and continuing to manage money, it is it's such a rewarding life. Sometimes I wonder why I got it, but as long as I got it, I'm going to take advantage of it.
Do you know, it's really funny. I've done a lot of interviews in the last few days about retirement, which they're changing the whole scope. And I've said this for a long time, Dan. I used to go to all those Northwestern Mutuals and all those retirement things, and I would say after I left, you know, we're not retiring. Where are you? Why don't you rewrite the book on it?
Right.
And today or yesterday, I did an interview with I think it was, I'm trying to remember if it was Staples or who it was, that I was doing, it had to be a retirement fund kind of company. And she said, you know, Born Before 64s and people that are from 1944 and whatever, they're not retiring. Mm-mm. They're working either part-time or they're working full-time. They're not wanting to retire. I said, to what? What are you retiring to?
Yeah, there are other aspects to that. Unfortunately, the period of time from 2000 to 2008 was incredibly destructive in terms of portfolio for people of our generation. We had a 40% decline in the market in 2000 with the dot-com bubble. Then we had the real estate collapse in 2007, where a lot of people still have houses underwater, that their mortgage is greater than the value of their house. And then we had the collapse in 2008 and 9. So a huge percentage of a lot of people's retirement assets
went out the window.
Are gone. And so that they're working because they have to work in order to be able to survive and pay their bills.
And a lot of people have their children with them because a lot of them couldn't find jobs.
Right.
There have been a lot of layoffs.
We have the lowest employee participation rate in almost 40 years.
We've got people that are on food stamps, the largest we've ever had.
48 million.
We also have people that, the lowest number of people buying houses.
In 51 years.
51 years.
Right.
Why should we elect another Democrat?
Well, see, that's an interesting observation. I say to people, I had the opportunity to do an interview with a black man who was a lifelong Democrat until 2013 when he became a Republican. He's a state senator in Louisiana and he's running for Congress. And we were talking about an article that I had written on the war and poverty. And I explained to my guests, I said, you know, Lyndon Johnson was a big supporter of the war on poverty.
Right.
And the war on poverty, we spent 22, so far, in 50 years, we spent $22 trillion onto eradicating poverty. More than we spent on all the wars combined in the history of our country, going back to the Revolutionary War. And we haven't moved the needle. In fact, we've destroyed the male figure in the black family by replacing them with the government. We have 13% of the population is black, and they account for 38% of the abortions. And I said to him, I said, you know, I look at what's going on in Chicago and Baltimore and other places around the country. The top 15 largest cities in the United States are controlled and have been controlled by Democrats for maybe as many, in some cases, 50 years. They have the highest crime rates, they have the highest death rates, and they have the most restrictive gun laws in the country. They have the highest unemployment rates in the inner city, and the highest death rates in the inner city. So I said to him, you know, would you be offended if I said that the black people are committing genocide upon themselves?
And what did he say?
I absolutely believe it. He said, I applaud your courage as a white man to say that, because what you're saying is that, for example, in New York City, there are more abortions than there are live births in the black community.
I know.
And with the number of black people that are being killed, the high unemployment rate, there's no opportunity. And yet we have the first black president in the history of our country.
But isn't that what the progressives have done from the very beginning? They actually brought that into being, if you take and go back in history on how they controlled the blacks.
Well, the people who were the founders of
The Progressive Party.
and the Planned Parenthood.
Right.
Again, this is something that a lot of people don't know, is the woman who founded Planned Parenthood, her original objective was to eliminate the Catholics and the Jews. And they went into those Catholic and Jewish communities trying to convince the women to abort their babies, and they virtually got thrown out because of their religious beliefs. But through the concept of women's health, women's reproductive freedom, they've convinced the black people, the black women, to kill their babies.
Right.
Genocide.
Right.
And under the auspices of reproductive freedom for women.
And which is ridiculous when you think about it. And wasn't there, I saw the movie Hillary's America.
I did too.
And one of the scenes of the movie is when they're taking these black women into the Planned Parenthood and doing the abortions, but there's a white gal who was fighting it, and they decided to take her, like it or not. And she couldn't have children ever after that. So, what does that tell you? Back in those times, that's when it all started.
Right.
And it was actually thinning out of the black population. That's what they were trying to do.
Get rid of the wheat and the chaff.
That's right. That's exactly what they wanted to do. Now, how can Hillary say she cares about women when she has support from all of the countries that really don't care about women's rights?
The Sharia countries.
Right.
Well, one would have to, that's a great question, but the other question that really needs to be asked, why is it that the mainstream media is not challenging her on that issue?
She got favors with him?
No, she owns them.
She owns them.
Right, not favors, she owns them.
She owns them. She owns Hollywood, too.
Because they're progressive, too.
They are.
The press.
They're sheep.
Well, I don't know that they're sheep. Is that they have fed at the progressive trough to the point that she happens to be their bell cow at the moment.
Right.
But if she doesn't get elected, they're going to look for somebody else another horse to ride.
Well, here's another thing that, is she well enough, really well enough, after all those concussions, all that things, the way she stumbles upstairs? I mean, I wonder sometimes, is she well enough to actually run the country?
Well,
Well.
I wrote a piece about whether or not Hillary has dementia or pre-dementia.
And we think, doesn't Bill have Alzheimer's in the beginning of Alzheimer's? At least that's what they're reporting.
I can't testify to that, but I can suggest that the fact that she had this, because of the work that I do in the veterans with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm convinced that her erratic behavior, her inability to remember what she said before, and her cognitive ability to interpret what other people are saying only to her advantage blatantly, I think she's got some kind of a mental impairment.
And on that note, we need to take a short break.
Okay.
And give your website out again.
The book is danperkins.guru, and the foundation is Songs and Stories for Soldiers, and the books are available at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and you should really get the audiobook. It's a great experience.
It is, actually. I loved it. And we'll be right back on Born Before 64, and Let's Just Talk with Kathryn Raaker and her guest, Dan Perkins. We'll be right back.